Bizarre stories from the subscribers.
Hey Leo, my name is Jorge. This story is really incredible and bizarre.
And I can't forget the day it happened. My dad and I decided to take a boat trip in a calm bay from here in the city, enjoying the bright sun and the blue sky. It was one of those perfect days when you think nothing can go wrong. We sailed peacefully, talked about life, and enjoyed the father-son moment. But suddenly, something changed. The sky started to fill with dark, heavy clouds. It was as if night was approaching quickly. The wind blew strongly, stirring up the waters that had been so calm before. We were in disbelief when a dense fog began to form around us. It was as if we were in a completely different world. I looked at my father, and his eyes reflected the same fear I was feeling at that moment. And then it appeared before us, emerging from the dense fog, a strange and sinister ship. It looked like a ghost ship, man, but it was in a terrible state of decay, old. The very fact that it was floating defied the laws of physics. Man, that ship looked like it came out of a nightmare. We desperately tried to turn our boat around, but something strange was happening. The current was pulling us toward the decaying ship as if we were being drawn by a supernatural force. That's when the inevitable happened. Our boat crashed into the hull of the sinister ship, man, and we sank. The water was really cold, and I held on to the wreckage of the boat while I frantically searched for my dad. I saw him swimming toward me, desperate to hold on to me. But the strangest thing of all was that as soon as we held on to the wreckage, we realized that the ship that was there had disappeared. There was no trace of it, man. It was like it had never been there. The mist cleared and it seemed like everything was normal. We swam back to the shore, and as we walked along the beach, we looked over at the spot, right? Hoping to see the ship again on the horizon, but it was gone. That was, without a doubt, the scariest experience I've ever had. And I believe my father too. But thank God we survived. Hello, Leo. My name is Vittoria, and I would like to share a story involving my father. When he was a teenager, he had a great passion for fishing. He used to catch a considerable amount of fish on his fishing trips. One day, around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, he had an intriguing idea. He decided to go fishing at night. The reason behind this decision was that the lake would be emptier, giving him the perfect opportunity to catch even more fish. So he told my grandmother that he was going to head to the lake to see if he could get plenty of food. When he got there, it was already past 6 o'clock, since the lake was a certain distance from my grandmother's house. My father spent a good amount of time trying to fish, but to his frustration, he couldn't catch any fish at all. Time went by and he decided to take a short nap. He left the fishing net set up there, right? And after napping for a while, he noticed that the net was full of fish. However, when he tried to pull it in, it got stuck on something at the bottom. Curious, he decided to get into the water to investigate the cause of the problem, right? To try to untangle whatever happened down there. While he was in the depths of the lake, he claimed to have seen a figure completely dressed in white walking down there. This sight left him perplexed, and he noticed that this mysterious figure was coming closer to him, walking in his direction. Terrified, he swam back to the surface, abandoning the net, the fish, everything. When he got to my grandmother's house, he was crying in despair. She asked him why he was crying, and he replied that he had witnessed something. Down at the bottom of the sea, it looked like a spirit underwater. My grandmother then shared a dark story that many people had lost their lives drowning in that lake over the years. And he might have witnessed one of those spirits that night. Iggy was trying to communicate with him or something like that. The next day, he returned in an attempt to recover his net, which he had left behind. And when he pulled it, he saw that it had a huge hole. Could it have been the creature that did this? It's very likely. Hello, Leo. How are you? This story occurred around 2012 when I was 7 years old. I live in the countryside of a rural town called Pienparana. I didn't have many friends, so I used to play with my cousin. On a pretty normal day, right after school, she called me to play. She said we would play doctor. Next to a pigsty near her house, there was a little house that was a storage room. There were a bunch of medicine bottles and boxes there, among other things, right? I saw one that was perfect and would work for our game. So I went there, all happy. However, as I ran toward the closet, I ended up feeling a terrible pain in my foot. When I looked down, I realized I had stepped on a nail. I was barefoot and my foot was unprotected. It was rough. I started screaming, grabbed onto the wall, and used all my strength to pull my foot off that nail. And when it came out, blood started dripping. I left limping. Hey, what about our game? I'm embarrassed to say this, but my aunt told me to pee on the wound. That it would help. And guess what? That's exactly what I did, man. After that, when I got home, I told my dad I had stepped on a nail, and he put a bandage on it and everything. A few days went by, and it was my sister's confirmation day. We went to church, but my foot still hurt a lot. Seriously, a lot. I could barely walk there. So my dad took me to the doctor right away. I was seen right away, and the doctor explained that he would have to open up my foot to remove the dirt. You heard that right. I started to get nervous when he said he would have to apply anesthesia to the hole. My dad held me firmly and said it wouldn't hurt at all, that the needle was small. I looked at the injection and it was gigantic, man. The moment it went into my foot, I screamed really loud enough for an alien on another planet to hear me. The doctor took out the needle and opened my foot with a scalpel. And from that point on, man, I didn't see anything else and I didn't feel anything either. I just kept praying for it all to end soon and for them to close my foot so I could be all right. Then he finished and I thought everything was fine. I got a shot in my butt, then I left. And after a month, my foot was completely healed. Good thing everything worked out and I didn't lose my foot or get tetanus, right, man? But that's it, Leo. Thank you for reading my story. I hope you make this animation. Take care. Hello, Leo. I'm Fabio, and I'm here to share a bizarre story that happened to me and my friends. We used to study in the afternoon, and every day we left school at 6:35, going back home on our skateboards since we all lived nearby, right? One day, my friends and I decided that we would go to the stadium where there was a skate park. However, there was a catch. There was a story going around that the stadium was haunted. The skate park was actually an empty pool, and a lot of skaters would go there to hang out, right? It used to be open in the past. Every weekend and holiday it was open for families to go there and have fun, right? There was a time when a family was there and their little 6-year-old son went swimming. Everyone was enjoying themselves eating and drinking, right? And since they were drunk, the boy took the opportunity and got into the pool. Even though he didn't really know how to swim, right? Unfortunately, he drowned and ended up passing away. Other people had already drowned there in the past and lost their lives. That's why the place was closed and ended up abandoned. So my friends and I went to the skate park after school. When we got there, we had to jump over the wall, and about 10 minutes later, we managed to get through a hole to reach the park. There was a heavy atmosphere there, Leo, and we were all tense. But even so, we kept doing some tricks and things like that. However, there was a friend named Bebeto. He was a beginner and was eager to try going down the ramp. My friends and I went to the ramp with him for support and encouragement, you know? He started counting to 5 to begin the descent. But before he reached the number 5, he fell hard to the ground, as if someone had pushed him. He got pretty hurt, man, all scraped up, and we helped him get up. He told us that he felt a hand pushing him hard, but it was a supernatural force. We quickly grabbed Bebeto and ran out of there. When I got home, my mom scolded me because she thought we were at school working on a project, but she got suspicious because we were late and called there, finding out that we had left a long time ago. I was grounded for a week and lost my phone until we were finally able to meet again. Bebeto said that before going up the ramp, he felt someone blowing in his ear, and that the force that pushed him was clearly supernatural. After all, none of us would have any reason to push him from up there, right, man? My friend concluded that it could have been some evil spirit wanting to do something bad to us. Note, Bebeto used to mock the spirits, saying he wasn't afraid of them and that he wanted proof of their existence. But anyway, Leo, we never skated in that place again. I heard not long ago that a pretty experienced skater had an accident there. He broke his head, man. I bet it was that spirit, because how would such an experienced guy fall like that, right? Hello, Leo. I'm Giovanna. I'm 19 years old. I want to share a story from my childhood that remains vivid in my memory as if it happened yesterday. One sunny afternoon, my father took me to a wake that was being held for my grandmother's husband, an elderly gentleman, right? When we arrived at the place, I noticed there were some people around the coffin. Everyone seemed pretty calm, not showing much sadness about the passing. I, like any curious child, started to observe the environment closely. While I was observing the man in the coffin, my perception was that he was alive. It seemed like he was sitting up, talking to people, but no one was responding. He even called out for my grandmother and was ignored by everyone. That deeply intrigued me, and I decided to look for my grandmother to understand why that man was there in that coffin, about to be buried alive. I found her inside in another room, crying a lot. I couldn't resist my curiosity and asked her why the man wanted to be buried alive. However, she didn't seem to pay much attention to my question at that moment. She just hugged me and told me to go stay with my father. Even so, I kept seeing you in the coffin as if you were alive. However, you wouldn't leave from there. When it was time to bury you, I saw them close the lid while you were saying my grandmother's name. That was creepy, and I was shocked by all of it. Why was this happening? I remember running away from there so I wouldn't have to see that terrifying scene anymore. A few years passed after that event, and I finally shared this experience with my father. That's when he explained to me that the man was already dead at that moment. And what might have happened was that I was seeing his spirit, a spirit that still thought it was alive, which is why it was restless. After that, I never had that kind of experience again, thank God. Hello Leo, my name is Cesar and I'm currently 15 years old. I'd like to share an intriguing story that happened when I was between 10 and 11 years old. It was around 2019 when I went through this truly frightening experience. Whenever I'm emotionally vulnerable, I end up facing a bizarre situation, man. I hear a family member calling me from outside the house, and when I open the door, there's no one there. Only a strong wind comes in. And in the days that follow, bad things happen, Leo. The first time it happened was around 4 in the morning. I was in a deep sleep, but that voice got into my ear in such a way that I woke up. It was the voice of my aunt and my cousins. It wasn't usual for them to show up at that hour.
Are you crazy?
4 in the morning, so I went to the door to see what it was about. But when I unlocked the door and opened it, a cold shiver ran down my spine. That wind came in and fear completely took over me. Soon, my grandmother arrived and asked me what I was doing there with the door open. My answer, still dazed, was my aunt was calling us. And I came to see what it was. With a perplexed look, she insisted that I go back to my room and go back to sleep. And that it wasn't time for a child to be opening the house door. The next day, my mother had a serious talk with me, warning me not to answer calls during inappropriate hours of the night. She seemed aware of something that I didn't fully understand. And today, Leo, I think that was a spirit or something like that. The second time was even weirder. I heard my mother calling and it was coming from outside. She was telling me to open the door, that she had forgotten her key at home. So I got suspicious right away, man. What would my mother be doing outside the house at this hour? So I walked over to their room, my parents' room, to check things out, and when I opened the door, my mother was sleeping. I quickly went to my room and locked myself in. I don't know what the purpose of that thing doing that was, but whenever it happened, things got worse at home.
I've gotten sick out of nowhere. My mom has lost her job. The kitchen roof mysteriously collapsed, among other things.
Since then, I ignore those external calls. I don't want to go through that again. Hello, Leo. My name is Geronimo, and I have a wild story to tell you. I met a boy named Miguel. He was in my class. Everyone thought he was crazy. Ever since we met, he always talked about a mysterious clown who supposedly lived on his street. Miguel claimed that at night, when everyone was asleep, the clown would appear on the rooftops of the houses and perform incredible tricks. The kids in the class didn't believe Miguel, thinking his imagination was running wild. They saw him as a crazy and really weird kid. However, Miguel was determined to prove that the clown was real and that his tricks were impressive. One day, Miguel told his group of friends that the clown had invited him for an amazing experience that night. According to him, the clown had promised that he would make him fly from the roof of his house and that the next day he would tell all of us about it. The news spread throughout the school and everyone started thinking he was really crazy, right? So when the next day came, Miguel didn't go to class. A week went by and he still didn't show up. The theory that Miguel had been in an accident was strong. Then, after some more time, the tragic news came. Miguel had been seen by neighbors on the roof with an umbrella in his hand, and when he jumped, he fell like a stone. When they arrived at the scene of the accident, there was no sign of the clown. Miguel was sprawled on the ground. The neighbors were confused and shocked. No one could explain what really happened. The only thing left was a clown umbrella by his side. The story of Miguel and the mysterious clown remained a mystery to everyone who knew him. People never knew if he really existed or if it was all just a strange illusion in the boy's mind. Since then, there's been nothing else talked about at school except his story. My name is Sophia, and I want to share an intriguing story that happened to me when I was a child. And it still haunts me to this day. When I was little, there was one thing I just couldn't do by myself, which was scrubbing my back with a sponge during bath time. I vividly remember being in the bathtub with warm water all around me, trying to reach my back, but my arms were just too short. My mother, always helpful, used to come into the bathroom and help me with this task. She would come over with a sponge and gently scrub my back while I relaxed in the warm water. Those moments became an important part of my childhood, and I always appreciated my mother's care and attention. However, as I grew older, the need for help decreased, and eventually I was able to manage on my own. Years later, as an adult, something strange happened. I was taking my shower as usual, with warm water and steam hanging in the air. While I was focused on washing my hair, I felt a familiar sensation on my back. It was the loofah, but I wasn't holding it. I thought my mother had come into the bathroom without me noticing, just like she used to do when I was a child. I thanked her, believing she was helping me again, even though I was already grown up. I continued my shower, but after a while I realized that something was wrong. When I looked over my shoulder to thank my mother once again, I was surprised to see that there was no one there. My mother wasn't in the bathroom and the door was closed, locked, Leo. After finishing my shower, I went downstairs to have dinner. My mother was setting the table, and when we started eating, I decided to ask her, "Mom, did you help me with my shower just now? Did you scrub my back with the sponge like you used to when I was a child? What do you mean, honey?" "I never did that. Not even when you were a child. And no, I was preparing the food at that time." I was stunned by her answer. I was sure my mother was helping me, just like she used to when I was a child, but she strongly denied any involvement in it. Perplexity took over our conversation that night, and I was left with the feeling that something inexplicable was happening in my life. Since then, this mysterious experience has continued to intrigue me. Who or what was scrubbing my back in the shower? I was never able to find an answer, and this story remains an unsolved mystery in my life. Hello, Leo. My name is Renzo. If you're interested in hearing my story, please draw me with brown hair and a tall stature. This happened when I was 9 years old, and now I'm 12. Once, I went to my grandfather's house, something I did every weekend for many years. I woke up early, full of energy to play. I went to my grandmother's room looking for a ball. It's worth mentioning that she passed away a few years ago, and my grandfather didn't touch her room anymore. He left it exactly as it was. After grabbing the ball that was near the bed, I left the door ajar, and it stayed that way all day. Later in the afternoon, my grandfather and my brother went shopping, but I didn't want to go with them because I was eager to use my brother's computer and play for a while. I spent several hours playing massively multiplayer online role-playing game. From time to time, I would go to the kitchen to get a cup of coffee to keep myself awake and continue the addictive gaming. On one of these trips to the kitchen, I glanced toward my grandma's room, which was now a bit more open. When I looked inside, I saw a silhouette watching me. I was paralyzed with fear for a few seconds. When I finally realized it, the face of the silhouette was dark. At that moment, I got completely goosebumps. I ran to my brother's room and couldn't play anymore because of the fear. I trembled every moment, counting the minutes until they came back from the street. And the more I counted, the longer it seemed to take. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway. The creaking sound the wood made when someone stepped on it drove me crazy, until at one point it stopped. I put my ear to the bedroom door to try to hear better if it was coming toward me, when suddenly I hear several knocks, man. After a few hours, they finally arrived. I ran to them, almost crying and still shaking. I told them everything. They believed it could be the spirit of my grandma. But my mom warned that it could be something evil pretending to be her. Who knows? What's curious is that when I was playing with the ball, I ended up kicking it so high that it got stuck in a tree. And right after that incident, the ball was inside her room. Since then, I've never been able to forget that episode. Hello, Leo. How are you? I want to stay anonymous, but you can call me by my nickname, which is Apollo, and I'm 21 years old. This story happened when I was 14 in 2015. At that time, I was going through a lot of problems, mainly psychological ones, because I was facing an existential crisis and suffering from depression. Because of that, I used to constantly fight with my family, cursing at everyone, and I would always isolate myself in my room. To try to solve this situation, my mother decided to create a prayer group made up of me, my father, my mother, and my older sister. In the beginning, this helped, but after a few months, something happened that I will never forget in my entire life. It was nighttime and my father and sister were already asleep. Only my mother and I were awake. That was when I asked my mother to fill up a bottle of water for me because I was sleepy. However, she was also tired and told me to get the water myself, right? That made me angry, man, and I started cursing in my mind. When I got to the kitchen, that's when I saw what looked like the shadow of a teenager or something like that. He was watching me standing on the stairs, leaning his elbow on the handrail. Like when someone leans on something and just stands there waiting, you know? I kept looking at that figure, and even though it felt like a long time had passed, in reality it was just a few seconds, and suddenly, when I blinked, that figure disappeared. After that day, I completely gave myself to God, and it never happened again. I never treated my family that way again, and it seems like it worked. I have theories about that, whether it was an obsessive demon, which is a kind of spirit that usually causes emotional disturbances and confusion. I hope I never have to face something like that again. It seems like my life has completely changed for the better. Thank you for listening to my story, Leo. May God bless you as well as your subscribers too. I hope you enjoyed this bizarre story from the subscribers. And if you want to send a story to appear in this segment here, just send it to this email, look@inscritosleo@gmail.com, alright? I'm going to wrap it up here, okay? Bye.